All right, sweet. So, hello everyone. Thank you for either joining us again last week or joining us for the first time on our personal website series as collaboration between IEEE and TSE. Last week we focused on the basics of HTML, CSS, and JS, and today we'll be focusing on React, which is just an extension of the part of JS, of the part of JS. So my name is Drew. I'm from TSE, and I'm joined by William from IEEE. And as always, these slides will be available for you to view afterwards, and we'll be recording this Zoom meeting for you to see later if you wish. So we'll just start off by asking what React actually is. React is a very flexible and powerful JavaScript library that's used for building front-end user interfaces. And what interests us most about React is its customizability and adaptability based on user input, and how much of an easier and faster alternative it can be for writing code as opposed to just using pure JavaScript as we did in last week's session. And React accomplishes a lot of this due to its structure, mainly through the use of elements and components. So a, a component in React is one of the building blocks that's used to structure code and construct code in general. So we might take different parts of a web page, such as the header, the nav bar, different sections, and basically by splitting them up into components, we can split up a page into different and reusable pieces. Components can be either written as functions, as shown in the top example, and as classes as well, which extend the React.component. And you might notice that this is the exact same as just an HTML block of code with just some parentheses and an adapter which references props. So both of these return something, both of these essentially render something. And this props is uh, referring to the parameters or the arguments set by when we create this declaration. So essentially, if you worked with any other programming language, if you've taken CC 11.8a and pretty much any programming language, props are essentially just parameters and arguments that you add, and their props are just custom parameters that are passed into a component, and they're called from outside the class. For example, we had a component called welcome, which extends React component, and that returns a tag of header1 with hello and this.props.name. So when we create a const element, we specify the name Sarah. So this element will just create an h1 tag with the output hello Sarah, and react.dom.render element and document.get element by ID root just means that this gets added into the div section contain with the ID root. And this can be a very good, efficient way of easily customizing code and easily creating repeating code, because with HTML, you might find yourself writing the same line over and over again, but this makes a much faster and much more efficient alternative. So props work great for adding custom user-defined sections, but what if you want to include a component that responds real-time and directly to user input? That's where another feature of React comes in, which is states. The state is basically a kind of internal prop that every component contains, but the main difference is, and the main thing that makes it special, is that it's private and it can be modified from within the component instead of being accessed from outside. For example, with a prop, we can only really create a welcome name equals Sarah outside of the actual welcome component. But with states, we can access these states from within. One example we might use this is, let's say we have a counter. Let's say we have a counter on our website that displays the number of button presses and lets the user add one button press when they want. So we might define a state with a count of 0 initially. So upon this initial render, then afterwards the user might tap the button, and we have a method that handles this click and sets the state to the count, initial count plus 1. So in just incrementing the count to 1, incrementing the count. And after all that, set state has been called and the state has been changed. And as soon as state has been changed, React re-renders the app, count is 1, and then our website is updated. So this makes for a much faster way to handle direct user input as opposed to props. So essentially, props are better for handling code that saves you from having to hard code a lot of things, and states are a better way of handling code that requires user input and real-time user interaction. One final part of React is hooks, which is a more recent addition to React, which essentially is just a increased functionality of states, and it lets you use state and other common React features without having to declare a class. So instead of using the class which extends React.component, we use a functional component instead. And this is just hooking into the features of class components like state. So it just has the added benefit of improving code reusability, readability, and code efficiency in general. So this is just a brief introduction of what React is. We'll be going into a demo. William will be taking us into a demo after this. But so far, does anyone have any questions with the basic understanding of what React is? Feel free to either unmute yourself or write in the chat, or you could PM William.
Okay, I guess we'll just get started with the coding demo then, because, well, it is a lot easier to, at least in my opinion, it's a lot easier to learn React by just doing it. So we'll be basically creating our own React app right now. And so before we do that, we'll need to install a few things. First one is Node.js. I just put the link to install Node in the chat. Basically, if you haven't already downloaded, you will need it, and you'll also need the package manager npm. I believe it should be downloaded by default when you do download Node. And I guess for some quick explanation of what it does, basically, Node is a way so that you can run JavaScript on your own browser, and basically like on your own computer. Yeah, and then npm is a JavaScript package manager. Yeah, so I don't know. Let me know, I guess, when you all are ready, or when you all have downloaded it. In the meantime, I guess. How do I do this? I think this works. Is this the right thing? I don't think it is. I don't know what I'm sharing. How do I do this? Okay, I think it is this actually. Okay. Yeah, so when you do have Node installed, you'll need to type in this command. This is basically a way to quickly create the boilerplate code to start working on a React app. How do I set up chat and stuff? Let me see, so I can see it while also. How do I view chat? I have no idea.
Is in the top.
Okay, there we go.
Like those 3 dots.
Yeah, it wasn't showing up for whatever reason. Okay, yeah. So Drew put in the command that you'll be doing. My app is sorry. My app is whatever you want to call it. For this case, we're going to be doing a basic tic-tac-toe game inside HTML, and this is just to kind of teach you state, and it's modeled off of React's own tutorial, although it does have some changes. So yeah, in this case, I'm just going to call it tic-tac-toe. You can call it whatever. And basically, once we have Node installed, we have npm installed, we can run this command, and then, oh joy, I do love this. I think my npm might be outdated. Let's see. Are you serious? Okay, I guess I don't have npm installed. Well then. I'm installing this then. We do love scuff. I'll just download the installer. All right, so we finally got Node installed in any case, and so we've essentially what we did is we ran npx create react app, and in this case I called it tic-tac-toe. I entered it, and then I opened it in VS Code, and then I ran the command npm start. So let's go this. Basically, you just type npm start, and then it will run the development server. Once you close it, this thing will not work anymore. So like I close it right now, I reload it, it will not load anything. Yeah, just like that. And once this thing actually loads again, I'll actually be able to see what's going on again. And that might take some time. Okay, so it's starting at least. Well, anyway, in the meantime then, I guess we'll just get started then. I'm going to open up a new terminal here. So just a quick look at the create react app repository, basically. We start with a README. It basically is how do you get started with create react app. That's it. We can like, I think there's like an open, okay, yeah, open preview, and it gives you like a prettier version. But yeah, basically, this is what we're mostly just going to be working with, npm start, for this basically just to test out. Yeah, that's the README. Package.json basically describes what your project is about. Like you can also see describes what React version you're using and so on. Package lock, it's basically a greater, a more fleshed out list, I guess. It's basically npms. These are your dependencies, and node modules is like where all your dependencies are. Public is just like your actual HTML file, and basically React will like put stuff inside here. And then you can also see like Favico, which is this thing up here, and so on. Manifest is for metadata mostly, and source is where we're actually going to basically do everything. So we start here in index.js. So basically with React, everything starts with the React DOM. It's basically, so in our previous workshop, we covered the document object manager, or the DOM. So React has its own virtual DOM. And basically what part of what React makes React relatively fast is whenever updates parts of the DOM, it only updates whatever was changed. And so generally with the regular DOM, when anything changes, the entire page is, the entire DOM is re-updated. But yeah, so basically with the React app, everything starts from this React DOM.render. And so basically means we're going to basically put in whatever our React code is into, in this case, the root. So if we go back to our public HTML file, if we scroll, we see that everything is basically enclosed into this div with the ID root, because that is selected by an index.js document.getElement by ID root. This, you honestly don't need to worry too much about it. But basically it's saying render app. Well, what's app? Well, we've imported app from /app. So let's check out app, and we can kind of just compare what we see in the code here to what we actually see on the screen. So we see it's a header. We have our image. Source is the logo. What's logo? It's /logo.svg, and that is like the React logo. That's the internal metadata. So this is the React logo. And it's yeah. Oh, did I close the wrong thing? Yes, I did. Yeah. So okay, wrong file. And then we see we have a paragraph, edit source app.js, and save to reload. We see that here. Learn React, and it's a link. So we can click on this and it'll go to react.js.org. Cool. Well, this is cool and all. And then you can like see the CSS for this. So this basically styles all of it. But we're basically going to be nuking all this. Yeah. But so first, React doesn't, the creators React don't specify any ideal like file structure or project organization. But in general, you'll often see React project structured in this kind of manner. So we're basically going to create a folder called under source called components. And components is going to be where we put our actual like modules, you could say. So like in this case, we're making a tic-tac-toe game. That means we're going to say put a square here or like a board here, things like that. In practice with a website, you might put things like a header in here, or perhaps you might also put other sections perhaps, or if you have like some special kind of button, you can maybe put that here. Some other layouts may also add in something called a folder for pages to distinguish between actual pages of your website and the actual the components that make up the pages. In this case, we're not going to be working with multiple pages, so we don't need to worry about that. Oftentimes, we'll also have a directory called our assets, and assets is just going to be like all of our images. So in this case, I actually have I think it's that too. Okay, yeah. So like I pre-prepared an image here, and so we're going to basically put our images in our assets. And so once we got that started, we want to fill out the components. So typically, components are going to be organized where you have inside the components, each actual component is going to be a folder. Or at least this is one paradigm or approach to organizing projects, and which I tend to prefer. So I'm just going to make a template folder, basically. Source components template, and general naming convention. Keep these capitalized, and then yeah, and then I'm going to make a file called index.js, and then to specify React, we're going to add the X. So JSX is basically JS with React. General coding practice is if your JS file has React, which is like the React style with where you're like putting HTML inside your JS file, then you use .jsx. Although if it's just plain JavaScript, you can just leave it at JS. So I'm going to make this. Oh joy. Okay, that worked at least. And then I'm also going to make a corresponding CSS file. And the reason for calling it index is basically due to the way it's set up. By default, if you say import something from, say, source components template, it'll automatically search index.js or index.jsx. And if that exists, then it's going to give that. So that way we don't need to write out source components /template /index or whatever every single time. And so what is every single component going to start with? Well, chances are we're going to be importing React from React. We don't actually need to do this to use the React style HTML embedded into JS, but very commonly you'll be using this. And if you are using class components, you have to use this because the class has to extend React.component. And then we're going to import our CSS file. So that's just going to be import index.css. Also, minor note, JS, you don't need these semicolons, but it's generally good practice to do so. And so we're just going to make this template a class component for now. So let's take a look at this. We'll be class template extends React.component component, capital C, and then export default template. And what this basically says is, so you can notice here in at the top we have import React from React. This is because React is the default. So we don't if we don't we can have exactly one default for anything, and otherwise we have to encapsulate it inside braces. So for example, I could not import React and just say component, but then I need to specify component inside here. So basically default just lets you do the import without using those braces. So that's our template. And with that, yeah. And index.css, we can leave it empty for now. So inside template, we'll probably need a render method. And what else is there? Oh, return. So we'll just leave it at return, and it's going to return something. And because with React, everything has to be, all our custom React components have to be wrapped in some actual component. So we're going to put it in as a div, and we're going to say class name template. So generally, you'll have like the class name correspond to whatever your component is. So yeah, we're going to have something like this. And we're just going to leave it like this for now. And that is our template. So once we have this, we can now just basically copy the template. So I'm just going to copy this. And we're going to, let's just, yeah, so let's just first make, say, the board. And then we're going to extend it to the actual game. Because we're going to, so the board is basically just the actual tic-tac-toe board. And there are many different ways to make a tic-tac-toe game. So this isn't like some end-all be-all way of making tic-tac-toe, but yeah. Also, just by the way, language-specific settings. Let's configure JSX or JS, JavaScript React, because it is kind of HTML. Oh, are you serious? How do I set it again? Configure language specific setting. Tab. I don't remember. JavaScript React. Please tell me. Okay, I guess not. But yeah, generally you want two space indents so it doesn't end up taking a ton of space, because with HTML you have a ton of nesting. I guess we'll unfortunately have to deal with this monstrosity for now. But yeah. Anyway, let's get started. Finally, I guess. So this is going to be a board. So actually, let's just replace template with board everywhere. And so what's our board going to do? Well, in this case, I want to represent a board with 9 different squares. And each square is going to be represented by a button. So how are we going to do that? And we're going to give a quick preview of functional components here. So we're going to have our square. Because the square is just going to be relatively simple, we're just going to do it here. Yeah. So we're going to have a square. And what's it going to do? Basically, the square is just going to be a div or button, right? So the squares are represented by buttons. I'm going to call it, just call it square. And then we're going to have it do something on when you click on it, right? We want to make it display an X or no. So this is where we're going to use props. You can just say props.onClick. And this is basically how a functional component will work with that. And then we're also going to pass in, is it an X or an O, right? So we're going to pass it in as a value. So for example, if we wanted to, oh, I forgot an equal sign. So for example, if we wanted to create a square, we could do something like square value equals X, and then onClick equals some function. So onClick is a function, so we need to assign it to a function, which is something you can do in JavaScript. You can pass functions into other functions as parameters and so on. But yeah, so we just do like something like this. And this will basically create a button if we have like some function. So I can make an anonymous function which basically says console.log hi. And basically that means when you click on it, the button onClick is going to log hi. Yeah. Cool. And so that's just our square. That's all it does. That's why we've just made it relatively simply here. And so let's go into the board. So the board, how are we going to do this? Well, first, we need to recognize that with our tic-tac-toe board, not all squares are the same. Or more specifically, the squares are unique, right? We want something specific to be associated with them. And so in this case, we're just going to make it the index. So how are we going to do this? Well, let's just say we're going to create a function in our board. We're going to say render square. So it's going to render the ith square from 0 to 8. So it's basically going to, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to have the top row be 0, 1, 2, second row be 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8 at the bottom. And how are we going to do this? Well, we can say the side square. Well, it is just a square, right? So we know we have a square. And what's it going to do? Value equals. Well, in this case, the board is part of the game. And so basically the board and the square are basically just right? They're their own small component. Honestly, I probably should have made this from the game actually, but yeah. So basically we're going to say we're going to pass some props to the board. And basically what this board will have is we're going to have some props. Actually, I'll just do this. Props. We're going to have squares and an array of the values in each square. And then what else are we going to have? We're going to have on click function that will handle logic for clicking on a button. Okay, this is horribly. Okay, yeah, anyway. So basically, we have squares passed in, and we also have an on click. So we're going to say on click equals, and then here's a tricky part. So basically, our on click, because it depends on what the game will have an on click function which we're going to pass down, and that on click function wants to vary based on which square is clicked. And a tricky thing about JavaScript is, so like for example, if we have, let's just say we have a function const print number equals I console.log I. So this is basically just going to print out the number, whatever number you pass into it. If you say print number 1, it's going to log 1. Now the issue with that, or the potential issue with that is, if you want to pass in print number as a function, or if you want to pass in, say, a function, and basically it's just going to say print 1 every single time, you can't just directly set the on click to print. You can't just do this, because print number of I is a function, or print number of I, print number itself is a function, but print number of I is null, because print number is a function that returns null. And by using the parentheses and giving it the argument, we're like consuming the function to get its return value. So instead, to get around this, or this concept, basically going to have an anonymous function that is always going to call the props on click. And because I'm realizing, and this line's kind of long, so we can just break it and like this, and it's more clear now. And because I'm realizing how much of a bad idea it is to start from the bottom, I'm actually just going to go to the board now. Sorry about that. But I feel like this really isn't making much sense right now, because I don't know. I'm very poor at planning. So let's paste this, and we're going to start from the game. Actually, let's, yeah. So once I set the game, I'll actually just put it into the app so that we can actually see what's going on. Yeah, so let's start from the game then. Once again, replace template with what we want to call it. If you're wondering how you do this, Control H is find and replace, and then you can press Control Alt Enter to replace every instance of it in the file. Yeah, just small things that help out a lot. So let's just start from the entire game. How are we going to represent our game? So I'm just going to go through this and then kind of explain the logic. When we create a game, generally with a React class component, when we have a constructor, we're always going to start with super props. That's just how it is. And then we're going to set the state for our game. Well, what we're going to do for a state is we're going to have a history, which is basically what was our board looking like after every single move. So it's going to be an array, right? It's going to be an array of our board. And we're going to represent the board as a single item map. So squares is basically the values in each square. So squares is just going to be an array of 9, and it's going to start off with null because the game starts off empty. There are no X or O's placed yet. So this is array 9 basically creates an array of length 9 and populate it with null. That's basically all it's saying. What else are we going to use for state? We also want to know whose turn is it. So we're going to say X to move, and we're going to say true because a game of tic-tac-toe starts with X, and I don't know any variants that start with O. So there we go. And yeah, so how is this going to work then? Basically, how do we actually create the game? Well, let's go to a render first and just kind of think about what we want. So this is our game. What do we want? So what I do know I want is I want the actual board. So maybe like put a board here. And then we're going to say we're going to create a board. And that's just placeholder for now. Hold up. There's like an autocomplete. Okay, yes, I can autocomplete this and it'll automatically import, which is very nice. Thank you very much. I love modern technology. Yeah, and so if you remember from when I started over here, we passed down squares and onClick. So that's just something to keep in mind. We will have like a squares equals whatever and onClick equals whatever. But anyway, so back to the actual game. How are we going to do this? Well, we're basically creating tic-tac-toe from a list of board states and whose turn it is. So rendering the actual board, all we really need to worry about is the history. And how are we going to do that? So we're going to say const history equals this.state.history. This is just to avoid writing out this.state.history all the time because it's really a pain. So this just makes it a lot faster. We can just refer directly to history. And this is actually in part why pretty much people almost always use functional components now, because, right, if we go back to board with square, we could just say props.onClick. With here, it's this.props.onClick, just things like that. Yeah, I can close the template. Yeah, so we're going to do that. And then we're also going to say, well, given our history, what's the current game board? Well, it's the last one in the list, right? Unfortunately, KS does not have negative indexing like Python does. So we're going to have to do the long history.length -1. And this is just going to get the last state, or the last square state of the squares that we've recorded. And what are we going to do from this? Well, we can say, let's the moves then. So basically, whose turn is it? You could say, or actually, I will leave this later because it is a little complicated. Let's just first go over then the winner. So we're going to have we're going to create a variable called status, and status is basically going to be telling us when you've won or lost. So let's just and we're going to put this out here. We're going to have a div last name equals info. Well, I'm lagging. Okay, yeah. So basically, we're going to put in status here, and in order to do that, we're going to, and basically, you might have seen this before or in board, but basically, when you want to insert a variable into our HTML, we have to envelop it in single braces, and then we can actually put JavaScript in here. So we can't actually put JavaScript in the plain HTML unless we wrap it in braces. So in this case, we're saying put the value of status in here. Well, what's the value of status going to be? Let's say we have some function if winner. Oh joy. We haven't defined it yet, but we god damn it. So we haven't defined this yet, but we will. And the general idea is if there is a winner, we're going to set status equals to winner 1. And this is basically a notation in JavaScript. It's the backtick. And then this is called a template literal. Basically, it means it'll substitute whatever's enveloped in here. So you can put variables in here. It'll substitute its string representation inside. So instead of having to write out like winner plus one, like the string 1, we can just do this. And then, well, if this isn't the case, we'll say next. So status equals, let's just say, right, we have x to move. This is how we find whose turn it is. If it's x to move, we're going to say x. Otherwise, we're going to say O to move. Cool. And so how are we going to do winner? Well, I'm very definitely coming up with this on the spot. Let's just say winner, we're going to pass in squares. So we're going to have to add in parameters. Basically, we're just going to create, I'll honestly probably paste this in the chat because it is a pain. Basically, we're just going to test every single possible arrangement of 3 in a row, and we're going to check if they're all the same. And if that is the case, then they've won. Yeah, that's it. So we have 0, 1, 2. So this is just the rows. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we have the column. 1, 4, 7, and 2, 5, 8. And then we have the diagonals, which is 0, 4, 8, and 2, 4, 6. And if you need help visualizing this, this is what it looks like: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically taking the rows, the columns, and then the 2 diagonals. And so basically these are like the permutation for 3 in a row, I guess you could say. So we're just going to test through all of them. Let I equals 0, I is less than lines.length, plus the I, and then const, let's say A, B, C is equal to lines at I. So we're just going to destructure this basically. So we're going to say A is equal to 0, B equals 1, C is equal to 2, or so on. And then we're going to say if the squares is our array of the of what move occupies each square. So basically, if they're all the same, so basically, or if they're all the same and they exist. So right. So first, let's say if not squares A or not squares at B or not squares at C. So if it's null, which means it's empty, we ignore it, right? Then we return, which basically means return null, which basically means, yeah, we don't have a winner yet. Otherwise, we're going to return like the actual, we're going to return the actual winner. So otherwise, we're going to say if say squares A equals squares B and squares A equals squares C. And then we're going to say return squares at A, which basically means we're just going to return whatever value it is. So it's going to be like either X or O, right? Yeah. And otherwise, if all else fails, we're just going to return null. So great. Now we've got this. Oh wait, this is outside the formula. So if this all fails, so basically, we're either going to return null. What is going on? Did I miss something? Anyway, so basically we're going to be either returning null or yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but oh, that's why. My bad. Okay, yeah. So either we're going to be returning null or we're going to be returning the square, or the square that of which is 3 in a row in. So great. Now let's fill this out then. So winner, well, we have our squares here, and we have our current state of the squares. So we want to see, does this current state have a winner? What is going on here? This is kind of scuffed. Anyway, so if winner of current. No. Oh wait, my bad. I see. So let's actually const result equals winner of let's say winner of current dot squares, right? So basically, history at the top is a single item map. So we have to actually access the squares, and then yeah, we can basically put in result here. So if winner of current squares, yeah, if winner of current dot squares, then we're going to say whoever it was won. Otherwise, we're going to say it's their turn to move. So we don't actually have board implemented yet, so I'll leave that out for now. Let's just actually see how this looks. So we're going to nuke this now. So we're going to delete the CSS file. Actually, we don't need to, but we're basically going to, yeah, we're just going to remove the import, remove the logo because we don't need it. And we're just going to remove all of this. You just keep the div app outside wrapper, and then we're going to say game. Let's just see how that looks for now. So there we go. We see something at least now. That's the X to move. That's really not much, but we can see, right? It's probably saying it's X to move. So that is kind of a reflection of our state so far. Yeah, and so how do we go from here then? Well, let's see. First, so remember that we had that on click that we needed for our when we click on a square. We're going to first work on that now. So on click, we're going to say our on click takes in I, which is basically which square is it being clicked. And so basically what are we going to do here? Well, once again, we're just going to make it easier to refer to the stuff. History equals this dot state dot history. Const current equals history at history dot length -1. And then we're going to say const squares equals current dot squares dot slice. Now, what does this mean? This basically means make a copy, so we don't have to. So we're basically working with a fresh new array. Why? Because we're going to be updating the squares, and then we want to add it to the history, right? When we update it, we don't want to be accidentally changing the previous ones as well because they're like referring to the same object or anything. So we're just going to make a separate copy. Well, first is, what if the game's already won, right? Or what if the square is already occupied? We don't want to do anything. So we're just going to early exit. So if winner of squares or the squares of I, which is not null, because it's either null, which is false, or X or O, which are both truth values, or truthy values, then we're just going to return. Otherwise, what are we going to do then? So this is like the actual logic. Well, squares of I is equal to, well, whose turn is it? Well, this dot state dot x to move, right? If it's X to move, then we're going to set that to X. Otherwise, we're going to set it to O. And yeah, once we have that, now we're going to set this dot set state. So set state is how we update the state. And basically, the important part of state is when you update the state, it'll tell React to re-render this component. Otherwise, it won't actually re-render the component. So yeah, so we're going to set state, and set state basically you pass in key values where the key is the state. So in this case, it's state.squares. And what are we going to set it to? We're going to set it to our local squares variable. So we're going to do that. Cool. Oh wait, sorry. History has squares. So this is a bit more convoluted. Basically, we need to wrap this. So history. So our state only has a history with a bunch of squares. So history is just going to be itself, except we're going to add something else. So it's going to be itself. It's an array, except we're going to add in. The squares. And so in case you don't know what this is doing, history is an array. And so we, in order to add something else to it, right? The array.concat method basically, it basically concatenates another array to the end of an existing array and return. And so basically, this is basically history, except we're also going to add on our new state, or our new board state, basically. And you might see it written this way, where these are all nested because it's quite a lot of nesting. But yeah. Well, what else are we going to update, right? So once we updated the squares, well, now it's the other person's turn to move. So we're going to update x to move to the opposite of what it is, right? It's either x to move or isn't x to move. So we're just going to update that. Oh, comma, right? So key value, comma, key value, so on. Okay, so once we've got that, then we can kind of get back into our board now, right? So we had our board, and we're going to say onClick equals onClick, onClick. So onClick is a function, and it's going to basically return. onClick is a function, but we do want it to be able to take in that value, right? And specifically, we basically, if we go back to board, you notice onClick props.onClick, this props.onClick of I. So it means the onClick passed in has a parameter I. What does that mean? Basically, rather than just directly doing this onClick, I should actually probably rename this then. So handle click, because it's not actually the clicking. Basically, what's going to happen is the board, what it's going to take in is a function that takes in a number, which is going to be like between 0 and 8. It's which square is it going to be? And then it's going to handle the actual clicking for that square. And of course, there's also the actual squares. So let's populate that. Squares equals current.squares, right? Let's see how it looks there. Oh, handle click. This dot handle click. Yeah, class component. You have to add in this dot whatever. So we don't see anything yet, but that's fine. We're still working it out. So once we have this, let's go back to our board now, finally. So if you recall, our board, right, we have our render square. Well, right now we don't have anything actually in our board, right? So we have this way to make our squares, but we're not actually using them anywhere. So what we're going to do here is we're going to basically populate our squares. How we're going to do this is we're going to create an array, and we're basically going to get we're going to create an array of size 9. This is the array of 9. And then we're going to get its keys, which means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to destructure. So this basically means we're going to create an array with the values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's all it's doing. And what we're going to do with it, for each of those values, we're going to map it, which basically, map is basically, given this value, for each of them, we're going to assume the value is like I. So what we're going to do that, we're going to say, so basically I is going to be 0, then 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, right? So this dot render square, and we're going to render the ith square, basically. So this is basically going to say render square 0, render square 1, square 2, and so on, all the way until square 8. Well, what does it look like now? Okay, progress. So now we see we have like these tiny buttons. Yeah, not the most impressive. And this is where styling is going to come in. So first is I'm just going to go back to our index.css. If you basically the index.css is like the base code. Typically, you will have like a separate global CSS file, and then you can kind of separate the CSS by through imports to be able to handle certain things, and then basically everything imports from that. So this is a basic, relatively simple application. I'm just going to work directly in here, and I'm just going to say I want the I want my general font size to be 16 pixels because I don't want to be looking at very tiny things. All right. Why is it still 12 pixels? But anyway, okay. But yeah, so we're basically saying we're going to set the root font size to 16 pixels. What does it mean? It means if I want to use the rem, a unit for sizing, it means I can just, it'll be relative to 16 pixels. Yeah, and also commonly for HTML, you might want to add what's called known as a reset. Basically, there's a lot of default CSS for a bunch of different things, and sometimes you don't want that. So a reset basically clears a lot of that, so you can just basically work directly with what you want, and like you don't have any unexpected CSS. But that's beside the point. So let's just first work on styling the board, and specifically, let's focus on styling the square. Why? Because we want to see the buttons working. So let's we're going to work with a square. And so if you remember, square returns a button with class name square. So we can select for it here and basically work from there. So let's just say we're going to make 10 rem large. This is pretty big. Height, 10 rem. Also pretty big, right? We're going to clear out the padding because in case there is any of it. And so we can actually tell a difference. We're going to give it a border. 1 pixel, solid black. Just leave it at that. Give it a white background for now. And in order to make the X or O centered in it, we're basically going to make the line height the same size as the height of our button. And then we're going to font size also the same size. So this is all basically, yeah. We're going to make it bold so it doesn't look very thin. And we're going to align the text. So basically, the line height and the line height being equal to that will make the text itself the same size as the cell. And then we're going to align it horizontally in the center. Okay. There we go. So now we have some buttons now, right? And we can see if we click, it's going to alternate between X's and O's. So that's something at least. Oh, looks like we messed up here somewhere. We will be fixing that shortly, I guess. So we have these squares now at least. And where do we go from here, right? Also, we notice that there's like these like weird outline. I don't like that personally. Basically, the issue here is you can basically say outline none, and ideally it goes away. Let's try again. Okay, we still see some weirdness, but yeah, we see that like that weird thing goes away. So that's progress. And basically, how are we going to arrange this into a 3x3 board? And this solution, my solution to that is basically we're going to create a board. Remember, our board wraps around the actual squares. So we're going to select for the board. And we're going to say width 30 rem, right? 3 times 10. Height 30 rem, because we want a square board. And what we're going to do is we're going to make use of flexbox here. Align items center, justify content center. And then we're going to let it wrap around. So typically, Flexbox will try to all fit on one line. We're going to let it wrap, and because it's 1/3 of the size, then we end up with a nice 3x3 grid. So there we go. We have a 3x3 grid now. Very cool. And okay, yeah, clearly we need to fix something because it hasn't detected, or wait, I'm very bad. X, O, X, O, X. Okay, yeah, so we have something messed up with the winner detection, so we'll fix that. Yeah, cool. So we have this, it seems like we have the basics of the game done so far. Yeah. Oh, and just a quick question. Does anyone need like catching up with anything? I'm probably going a little fast. And like you can probably feel free to unmute. There aren't many people here, so okay. Okay. So it doesn't seem like there are many questions then. I guess I'll just keep going on then. I guess the first thing I see is what the heck is going on here, right? Let's fix that. So going back to our game then. Where is it? This dots winner 1. Oh, wait, right. So winner is a function. And it returns who1. So maybe I'll say const result equals winner of current dot squares, and then say if result, right, then we're going to say result1. How does that fare? Really quick. Oh, I'm bad. Well, that is not very promising then. So now it has failed to detect. Let's do some live bug tracking then. Let's see. Const result equals winner. So we're setting it to the winner, and then if it is a winner, then we say that person won. Let's see. Winner returns squares of A. Let's see. Where do we pass into squares? Let's see. We do love live bug tracking. Let's just log it maybe. Let's try logging the result. Console.log result. And so basically every single time the state updates, we should be getting this. So we can open up F12 to see the developer console. I would prefer it be inside, but whatever. Okay, so let's just look at the console here. So that's null. Right, so that's the result in the beginning. If we say X, still null, 0, null, and it's probably just going to be null every time. Right, because otherwise, okay, so this is X1. Oh, there we go, X1. Was it the diagonal that failed? So then maybe that like, I don't know, I probably messed up somewhere on the, yeah, so what is this? 0, 4, 8, I believe. So that's probably just, well, this is probably just like, let's see. I see. Let's see. If not squares A, right. So if any of them are null, oh wait, I see. Yeah, so this is basically preemptively exiting. This should be continue. I think that fixes it. X. Okay, yeah, that's the first one. And then if we test any other one. Okay, there we go. So that works now. So we now do have a successful tic-tac-toe game, and we do have like whose turn is it and who won. But what if we want to make it a little fancier? So what if we want to be able to undo a move, for example? That's what we're going to be going into next. But first, let's make this a little prettier. So we just have like this tiny little thing here, basically saying whose turn is it, who's about to win. So let's just change that a bit and make it a little easier on the eyes, I guess. So we're going to now edit the CSS for a game. And we're going to select for a game. So I believe that's dot game. And we're basically going to turn this into a flex box. Flex direction row. Actually, let's just let's not. We're going to make the font size larger though, and we're going to add in some margin. So basically, margin is just going to make it so this isn't pressed against the screen. So that's a bit nicer. We don't have it like just pressed against the screen, and the font is larger. Well, what are we going to do now? So if we go back to our game, we have the board and the info. So I'm going to basically say the board is going to float to the left, and then info will float to the right. And they're both going to be size 50%. Once it's done, they should appear side by side. And that's better. That's a lot better. So now it looks a bit more presentable. This is CSS, but yeah, CSS does matter as much as some people despise it. So yeah. Now that we have a somewhat presentable, or not hideous at least, looking game, we're going to add in some more functionality. So we're going to add in actually working with the history now. Basically, how do we go back, for example, in case we want to. So we're going to add in a function to our game. We're going to call it jump to. And it's basically going to mean we can jump to a move. But once again, we're going to be working with history. So to make it easier, we're going to do that. And so as it turns out, because of the way we've structured our history, which admittedly isn't very memory efficient, right? But the way we have done it, it means it's extremely easy to switch to a new move, right? Because all you need to do is just set state. And I'm going to set history to history at move, right? Or sorry, history dot slice 0 to move. And this basically means we're just going to make it so that the history only goes up to that move that you want to go back to. Is there anything else that we need to do? Not really. But as it turns out, slice actually excludes the value, the very last value. So we're going to add 1 to this. And once this is done, it should be able to work, I think. But how are we actually going to jump to it, right? We don't have any way to do so, right? There is no button to say jump to this. So we're going to add that now. How are we going to do this? Well, inside our render function, there's some things we can do. So let's go back to our render. And we can remove our console login since we debugged that. Let's have a way to get the moves. So we're going to say const move is equal to history.map. And basically what we're going to do with this history is we don't actually need the value itself. Basically, instead what we're focusing on is we want to make buttons corresponding to which move it is. And so basically with map, you can, like, for example, just map over the values. But if there are other optional parameters, if we want to specify the move, this is basically just going to be the index. So if you have the values like 2, 4, I don't know, like 2, 3, 5, whatever, then you'll have 2 and then index 0, 3, index 1, 5, index 2, so on. So we can do that. And we're going to map it to, or for each of these, we're basically going to create a description. And so is this move the 0th move, as in has no move been done yet? Then we'll say move equals 0. We're going to say reset game. Otherwise, we're going to say reset to move whatever move it is, right? Do I need to wrap this in parentheses? Okay, yeah, right? Oh, there we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say return a button with class name, I don't know, undo button. And the on click is going to be, when you click on it, it's going to be to move. And then we're going to put our description in there. It's going to be a button with the label reset game or reset to move, whatever. And probably should have wrapped this in parentheses. All right. Okay. Cool. Where do we go from here then? Well, we want to actually put these buttons somewhere, right? So inside our info, let's also add in a div. So we're going to wrap our status in the div. And then we're also going to create a div, and we're going to put our moves in it. Let's Let's see how that looks. Okay, reset game. Let's make a move. Reset to move 1, move 2, and so on. Well, we wanted to take up some of this vertical space. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's begin. So we're going to give this div a class name. Maybe like, I don't know. Let's see. Let's say, I have no idea actually. Let's say move. I don't know. And basically, inside moves, we can, our CSS will say dot moves. Let's make it we can just make it like a flex box, flex direction column, which basically means we're going to make it flex downwards. Flexbox does also take up as much space as it has. So because the thing is 50%, that's what it's taking up right now. So let's just try this out. And there we go, just like that. It's there. Does this work? Let's try reset game. Oh, it doesn't move. Oh, but O to move. And so now we notice that we've forgotten something in our logic for our jump to, right? We also need to set X to move. Well, what are we going to set it to, right? So it's we're going to set it to is move equal move mod 2. Let's see. Let's just try this because I don't have much brain power. Basically, we're going to say, right, if the move that we're jumping to is equals, let's just say 1. If the move we're jumping to is oh, question mark. Thank you very much. Let's just try this really fast. So O to move, reset game. There we go. Okay. So I wasn't actually sure. So basically it means move 1 is X, or it's X to move on move 1. So basically, if we're going to move 1, we want to make sure that it's X to move. And if it's O to move, for example, let's just do 2 more moves. We reset to move 1. Okay. Is it always X to move, actually? Oh joy. So let's try O to move, and then, okay. Okay, so it's always X to move. That is an issue. Let's see. Set state, X to move. Let's go back and see how it ever changes. So this is not changing, which is quite interesting. So let's look through and see what's going on. Jump to, we have the history, and then we're setting the history to that, and then we're updating X to move. We can log the move basically and kind of see what's going on. So we're going to open up our trusty logger here, and we're going to basically just say console.log move. And this will basically give us probably all we need. So let's just say we're going to jump to 0. What is move? Move is 0. So for move mod 2 equals 0, it means it's X to move, and otherwise it's Y to. So this should be move mod 2 equals 0 is equal to X. Otherwise, it should be O. So let's try what's going on in here. We can say console.log move and then move mod 2 equals 0 and kind of see what's going on. So let's try that. Maybe we should do inline. O, and then let's try move 2 true, and then 1 false. So then this should be updating, right? So what is going on here? It means that at least our logic is correct. So like we could actually just paste this entire thing in here and see what, right? X, O, X, and then O, 2X, 1, O. So our logic is working, it's just our game is not updating. So why is that? Let's go back. This.state.x to move. right, render status equals this dot state dot x to move x, otherwise O. Interesting. Okay. We can try it. Maybe logging. This and see what's going on. So let's try that. Actually, I really want to. How do I dock this again? Is it this? I don't remember. There is a tool for probably over here. Yeah, let's dock it to the right. Okay, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. And yeah, that's Flexbox for you. But so at least now we can see just X and O, and then where's my console? So reset 2X, okay, and then 1, O, O. But this is not updating. Interesting. So how do we do this then? Status, well, status is equal to this dot state dot x to move x, otherwise O. Let's put this in here because who knows what's going on. Try it again, x, O, x, and then move 2, x, 1, O, so. But then if we check the x, O, x, and then x, and then 0, O, x. Oh, I see. X to move. Oh, I see. So, oh, yeah. So x to move is a Boolean. So I'm setting it to a value here, and these are all truthy. Yeah, so basically x to move is equal to, this is true, x is to move, and we can just actually just straight up remove this part because the logic of it is actually handled given x to move is a Boolean. Good job, me. And now it should work. Reset to move on. It's O to move. It's O to move. Okay, there we go. Thank you, console. So we have this kind of working version of tic-tac-toe where we can do this. We can go back to moves. Let's make a tie so we can. I hope this is a tie. Okay, so we want to. The last case is now. What if there's a tie, right? What are we going to do in that case? Well, if you remember where we set the status, if there is a result, then that person won. But otherwise, perhaps something we want to check is if move say, or moves.length is it is moves, right? Okay, let's see.
Moves is an integer, isn't it? Or is it?
Let's see. Const moves, like JSX element. Yeah, moves is a.
Because moves is just an integer, you can just say if moves equals 9.
Okay, wait. So jump to move is.
That's referencing like the prop.
Oh, wait, so it's history, right? So history is our moves basically, right? So it starts with length 1. So that means if it has 9 plus 1 equals 10, then is equal to 10. So this dot state dot history is equal to.
We declared it as const history. As in like at the top of. Wait, no, scroll down.
Oh yeah. History. Yeah, we just making it easier. Yeah. Then we can say status is equal to it's tie, something like that. And then else we're gonna set it to like that. And let's try it now. How do I reliably make a tie actually in tic-tac-toe? I had no idea. Okay, but yeah, there we go. So now we have it's a tie. And cool. So now we've built a basic tic-tac-toe with state. If you want, you can style this more. So I could probably do that right now. But yeah, otherwise that's most of this workshop.